Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast.
Glad to be here.
So today we have a really fascinating deep dive lined up. We are unpacking what I would honestly call an essential guide by Felix Römer over at smartkeys.org.
Yeah, it is a fantastic piece.
It is titled Comprehensive AI Governance Policy for the Modern Workforce. And, our mission today is really to treat this source material as like a comprehensive playbook for modern professionals.
Right, because everyone is trying to navigate this massive shift in the future of work right now.
Exactly. The pressure to just adopt AI immediately to boost business efficiency it is immense. The text points out the staggering statistic that right now, 79% of leaders see AI adoption as absolutely critical to their innovation.
79%.
Yeah, 79%. Yet a massive portion of those exact same leaders lack any clear plan for how to actually deploy it safely.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
It is. It is like, imagine you are building this multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art sports car. You obsess over the engine, the aerodynamics, the pure speed of the machine. But in your rush to just get it out of the garage and onto the track, you completely forget to install the brakes.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Because sure, it might go incredibly fast right out of the gate, but without brakes, a catastrophic crash is not just a possibility. It is an absolute inevitability.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we're seeing in the corporate world with artificial intelligence right now.
Yeah.
People forget what brakes actually do in a high-performance vehicle.
What do you mean, like they stop the car?
Well, yes, but they are not just there to stop the car. Brakes exist, so the driver actually has the confidence to push that engine to its absolute limits, right?
Yeah.
Knowing they can actually control it when they go into a sharp corner.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and that is the fundamental trade-off between product velocity and safety. When a company skips having a formal AI governance framework, sure, their software development might speed up for a few months,
Right.
but they're introducing these deep systemic vulnerabilities that will eventually cause a devastating crash.
So what actually happens when a company skips the brakes and that crash happens?
Well, the fallout is severe. I mean, it goes way beyond just a temporary PR headache. When these tools go from being fun experimental novelties to the core systems running a business.
Yeah.
Unchecked usage can just obliterate customer trust and trigger immediate regulatory crackdowns. The source material highlights some really specific historic failures to show this, like Microsoft's Tay chatbot from a few years ago.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I remember the headlines, but how did that system actually break down, like from a technical perspective?
Right, so it was a massive failure of input governance. Tay was designed to be this experimental conversational AI on social media. And the underlying mechanism was reinforcement learning, meaning the system updated its behavior based on the data it ingested from users in real time.
Okay, so it learned as it went.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the developers did not put any guardrails around what kind of data was acceptable to learn from.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Within 24 hours, internet trolls just flooded the system with highly toxic, malicious inputs. And because the AI had no governance filter telling it, reject that data,
It just absorbed
it rapidly adopted it and started spouting that exact same toxic behavior back out. Microsoft had to pull the plug almost immediately.
Wow, so it just absorbed the worst parts of its environment because there was literally no rule telling it not to.
Precisely.
And, that is just a conversational tool. What happens when these unchecked systems are making really high-stakes decisions about people's actual lives?
Well, that brings us to the COMPAS system. That is another big example cited in the text.
What is COMPAS?
It was an algorithmic tool used in the criminal justice system to assess a defendant's risk of recidivism.
So predicting if they would reoffend.
Yes. And the problem here was the training data itself. The historical arrest data the system learned from contained these really deep systemic biases.
Right.
The algorithm simply identified patterns in that flawed historical data and then applied them to brand new cases.
So it wasn't even a glitch in the code.
No, not at all. The tool demonstrated profoundly biased outcomes, flagging specific demographics at much higher risk levels completely incorrectly. It was doing exactly what it was trained to do, but trained on flawed logic.
That is wild. But how does a business leader, looking at those historic examples, translate those kind of abstract risks into tangible business roadblocks for their own company?
Well, the business impact is incredibly measurable. The source highlights some IBM research showing that a lack of explainability is actually one of the primary roadblocks preventing leaders from deploying AI.
Explainability.
Yeah. Think about it functionally. If a bank uses a complex neural network to approve or deny small business loans, and a loan is denied,
Customer's going to ask why.
the customer, and more importantly, the regulators, are going to ask why. And neural networks operate a bit like a black box. They process millions of variables in ways that just are not immediately obvious to a human observer.
Nah.
If the bank cannot clearly explain the exact mechanism behind that denial, they cannot defend the decision. And that opacity, it erodes trust and invites intense legal liability.
So governance is really the key to unlocking the ability to use the technology at all.
Exactly.
So if the stakes are this incredibly high, businesses clearly need a foundational compass. Where do they even start to install these corporate brakes?
Well, they establish a foundation built on 4 non-negotiable pillars.
Okay, what is the first one?
The first pillar is fairness. But, and this is important, this is not just a philosophical goal.
Right, can't just be talk.
Exactly. It requires actual technical mechanisms. It means your engineering teams have to explicitly examine the data sets they use to train the models. If your data is skewed, say 90% of your customer data comes from one specific demographic.
Then the AI is going to perform terribly for anyone outside that group.
Exactly. Fairness means reweighting that data and rigorously testing the error rates for protected groups during the development phase, long before the software ever goes live.
Okay, so you are building the bias check directly into the testing environment. That makes sense. What is the second pillar?
The second is transparency and explainability. This requires creating what the industry calls model cards and explainability artifacts.
Wait, model cards, are those essentially like a nutrition label on the side of a cereal box, but for an algorithm?
That is a perfect equivalent, yes.
Yeah.
A model card is a standardized document that tells anyone looking at the system exactly what went into it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it lists the ingredients, basically the data used to train it. It states the intended use case. And crucially, it lists the known limitations or the allergens, if we keep the analogy going.
Right.
It explicitly tells users what the model is not supposed to do, so auditors can immediately look under the hood.
Okay, that makes total sense. Because if the AI makes the wrong call, transparency shows us how it arrived at that decision. But someone still has to answer for it, right? I assume that is where the third pillar comes in.
Yes, the third pillar is accountability. This is the operational obligation to ensure that human beings, not automated systems, are ultimately responsible for high-stakes outcomes.
Because you can't just blame the computer.
Exactly. A company cannot stand in front of a judge or a regulatory body and say, well, the algorithm did it, so it's not our fault. Accountability means designing workflows where a human expert remains in the loop to review and override AI decisions when necessary.
Got it. And final pillar.
Security and privacy. This involves embedding data protection by default.
What does that actually look like?
The primary mechanism is data minimization. Only collecting the exact data points you absolutely need to run the model, and nothing more. It also involves anonymizing the data, stripping out personally identifiable information, and it requires really rigorous adversarial testing, which is often called red teaming.
Oh, red teaming. When you say red teaming, you mean actively paying a team of, friendly hackers to try and break your own system intentionally, just to see where the weak spots are before the real bad guys find them?
Precisely. You simulate cyber attacks to expose vulnerabilities in the model's logic or the data pipelines, so you can patch them proactively.
Okay, so what does this all mean? I have to push back a little bit here.
For it.
Fairness, transparency, accountability, security. I mean, they sound fantastic. They sound exactly like the core values a company would print on a glossy poster, right?
Yeah, hang it in the break room.
Exactly. They hang it in the corporate break room to make everyone feel good. But they are incredibly abstract. How does a company actually code a philosophical concept like fairness into a daily software pipeline?
Well, you are identifying the exact chasm where most corporate AI initiatives completely fail. Yes. And the source material is very clear on this. You cannot leave these principles as abstract concepts. You must pivot from philosophical values to specific technical controls. You have to operationalize the rules.
Operationalizing. I like the sound of that. But what does the actual execution look like for an engineer?
The most critical step is that businesses should never try to invent these rules from scratch.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. You leverage established, globally recognized frameworks. The text specifically points to the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, NIST being the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Okay.
It also highlights the OECD AI principles, as well as standards from ISO and the IEE.
So it's basically like international building codes.
I mean,
Like, if you are constructing a massive 90-story skyscraper, you don't sit down on day one and try to invent your own structural physics
right.
or make up your own chemical formula for how concrete cures. You follow the established, rigorous building codes that thousands of engineers have already agreed upon to ensure the building doesn't just collapse.
The building code analogy is entirely accurate. You take those recognized standards and you map your internal engineering practices directly to them. And what's fascinating here is how these static frameworks transition into living, breathing technical controls inside a company's software system.
Living controls.
Yes. The guide details how this is achieved through automated dashboards and continuous health scoring.
Give me a tangible example. If I am looking at one of these dashboards, what exactly is it showing me?
It is showing you real-time metrics on how the AI is performing out in the real world compared to the laboratory. A key metric is monitoring for performance drift.
Wait, drift. When you say drift, you mean the AI starts making bizarre or inaccurate decisions because the real-world data it is seeing today no longer matches the historical data it was originally trained on.
Exactly. Imagine an AI model that was trained to predict consumer supply chain demand based on data from, say, 2018 and 2019.
Oh, I see where this is going.
All right. When the global pandemic hit in 2020, consumer behavior changed overnight. The AI's predictions would have instantly become completely useless. That is drift.
Wow.
So an automated dashboard constantly measures the accuracy of the model's current outputs. When accuracy drops below a certain threshold, the system triggers an alert that is aligned to your actual business KPIs.
So it flags it before it ruins the quarterly revenue.
Yes. It forces the engineering team to pull the model offline and retrain it before it causes financial damage. Furthermore, you build auditability directly into the machine learning pipeline.
Meaning you keep a perfect receipt of every single change made to the code.
Yes. If there is an issue, a developer needs to be able to reconstruct the exact data sets, the specific version of the code, and the decision pathways that existed at the exact moment the error occurred. It creates an accessible, bulletproof audit trail.
Okay, that makes the transition from a glossy breakroom poster to a daily engineering pipeline much, much clearer. But here is a reality check. An automated dashboard throwing up drift alerts is completely useless if nobody's actually looking at the screen, or if no one in the building feels personally responsible for fixing it. We have talked extensively about the software mechanisms, but what about the human structures? Like, who actually owns this problem?
The source material provides a rigorous structural breakdown for ownership, and it moves from the top down. Visible leadership is mandatory.
So it starts at the top.
It begins with the board of directors and the executive leadership. Their job isn't to write the code. Their job is to set the cultural tone and, crucially, allocate the budget necessary for safety and oversight.
So leadership funds the breaks. Who actually installs and manages them?
That responsibility falls to the legal, risk, and audit teams. Legal counsel maps out the compliance obligations, while the risk teams validate the data integrity. And these teams must be given clear decision rights.
Meaning they have teeth.
Exactly. They act as the quality assurance gatekeepers. They need the authority to pause a system entirely if it violates the company's risk threshold. And then below them, you establish cross-functional committees.
What does a cross-functional committee actually do on a random Tuesday afternoon?
They act as the ideation and ethics review board. They bring together product managers, engineers, legal counsel, and finance experts to review new AI proposals before a single line of code is ever written.
Ah, so they catch problems early.
Yes, they enforce the standards during the design phase. And finally, you have the model owners.
So the model owner is basically like the captain of the ship for a specific algorithm.
That is the perfect way to describe it. The model owner is a specific, named individual who is personally accountable for the entire life cycle of one particular AI model.
Wow, that is a big job.
It is. They oversee the initial data sourcing, the daily monitoring on those dashboards we discussed, and they manage the incident response if the model starts to drift.
Okay, this raises a really practical, kind of messy question for me.
Yeah.
You can have the most diligent model owners and the most supportive executive boards in the world. But how does a company ensure that an average, well-meaning employee in, say, the marketing department doesn't accidentally leak highly sensitive proprietary company data by pasting it into some unapproved public AI chatbot just because they wanted help quickly formatting an email?
It is honestly one of the most common and dangerous vulnerabilities companies face today.
I bet.
The text tackles this by outlining a strategy that combines corporate culture with hard technical limits.
Oh.
First, you implement role-based training. You don't just hand employees a 50-page policy document that no one reads.
Right?
You publish concise, practical guidelines detailing exactly which tools are approved and establish strict privacy rules.
So you have to explain to them why pasting proprietary code into a public model means that public model might memorize the code and literally spit it out to a competitor next week.
Exactly. Education is the first line of defense. But you back up that education with technical enforcement.
How so?
You mandate the use of approved tool chains on company-managed devices, literally blocking access to unvetted external AI platforms. But to ensure this doesn't stifle innovation, you provide safe sandbox environments.
A sandbox being like a secure, walled-off instance of an AI tool where the employee can experiment, but the data never actually leaves the company's servers to train the public model.
Yes, you give them a safe playground, but lock the gates to the dangerous areas.
That is smart.
The framework also emphasizes combining this mandatory training with centralized monitoring. But perhaps the most vital cultural component is establishing robust whistleblowing channels, like CITs or ethics point.
Because if an engineer sees a data set being used that they know is flawed, they need a safe way to raise their hand without fear of getting fired.
Exactly. The source material insists on the necessity of anonymous, encrypted reporting channels. You must provide a simple, private way for employees to speak up and aggressively protect those whistleblowers from retaliation. That internal culture of transparency is the actual engine that makes the governance policy function.
All right, so we have the internal house in order. We have the dashboards, the model owners, the sandboxes, and the encrypted reporting channels. But companies are not operating in a vacuum. We live in a world governed by massive, complex, and honestly often contradictory global laws.
Oh, totally.
Let's look at the different regulatory philosophies out there. How does a company's internal framework hold up against international regulations?
Well, transitioning from internal controls to global compliance is the final critical step. Operating across different jurisdictions means compliance can no longer be a one-time audit. It must be a continuous operational discipline.
Right.
The global landscape is shifting, and different regions are taking distinctly different philosophical approaches.
Let's hear them. Start with the European Union. They usually lead the charge on data regulation, right?
They do, and their approach is heavily penalty-driven. The EU AI Act establishes a very strict, comprehensive, risk-based regime. It categorically bans certain high-risk uses of AI, like social scoring, and mandates severe transparency and data protection requirements for others. And the enforcement mechanism is entirely financial.
How severe are we talking?
Non-compliance can result in massive fines of up to 35 million euros, or 7% of a company's global annual turnover.
Wait, 35 million euros or 7% of global revenue?
Yes, whichever is higher.
That will bankrupt a mid-sized company immediately. Is the United States following that same broad, punitive route?
No, the U.S. is taking a much more sector-specific approach. They are leaning heavily on existing regulatory frameworks.
Like what?
Well, for example, in regulated sectors, we are seeing the adaptation of rules originally built for the banking sector after the 2008 financial crisis, specifically the SR 11-7 standards.
What does SR 11-7 actually require a company to do with AI?
It essentially treats an AI algorithm the exact same way the government treats a complex financial model. It requires a company to maintain a strict, comprehensive inventory of every single model they run. You have to rigorously document the model's assumptions and validate its performance. The goal is that if an external, unfamiliar auditor walks into your building tomorrow, they can look at your documentation and instantly understand exactly what the system can and cannot do.
Are there other regulatory signals from around the world that leaders should be tracking?
Yes, the source outlines several others. Canada has introduced directives mandating algorithmic impact assessments, peer reviews, and mandatory human oversight for systems that have a high impact on citizens. The UK is favoring a more decentralized, sector-led approach, empowering individual agencies to regulate AI within their specific domains. Meanwhile, China has implemented measures heavily focused on intellectual property rights and controlling generated content.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. If I am listening to this, the massive EU fines, the strict U.S. banking standards, Canada's impact assessments, it sounds entirely overwhelming.
It is a lot to track.
It is. But if a business actually utilizes those recognized frameworks we talked about earlier, like the NIST guidelines, They're essentially building a crosswalk.
A crosswalk.
Yeah, they are creating one rigorous internal engineering standard that maps perfectly to all of these different global laws. Doing that isn't just a defensive move to avoid a 35 million euro fine. It becomes a massive competitive advantage.
Oh, absolutely.
It means your company can confidently launch a new AI product in Germany, then in Canada, and then in the US without having to rebuild the software from scratch for every single border you cross.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that crosswalk concept is the ultimate strategic takeaway from the text. When you treat compliance as an ongoing operational discipline, you're fiercely protecting your business's bottom line. You ensure your product velocity isn't suddenly derailed by a regulatory roadblock in a new market. By maintaining your model cards, your monitoring dashboards, and your audit trails, you make your compliance demonstrable. You can instantly hand over the required proof to regulators, partners, and customers, proving your systems are safe.
It turns a defensive necessity into a powerful offensive capability. I absolutely love that perspective. All right, let's bring all of these incredible insights together for a final practical roadmap for you, the listener.
Sounds good.
The immediate next steps laid out in Felix Römer's article are crystal clear. Do not wait for a regulatory crisis or a public relations disaster to hit before you install the brakes.
Start today.
Exactly. Start your rollout today. Define clear named model owners for every AI system you operate. Set up those simple but vital transparency artifacts like model cards, and launch role-based training for your employees this quarter so they understand the difference between a safe sandbox and a dangerous public chatbot. And most importantly, align your AI performance controls directly to your business KPIs so these governance practices deliver real, measurable value to your bottom line.
And as you move forward with operationalizing those steps, I want to leave you with a completely different thought to ponder.
Let's hear it.
We have spent all this time discussing how humans govern AI. But as these systems become infinitely more complex, generating billions of data points a second, human oversight might soon hit a physical limit.
That makes sense. We just can't process it fast enough.
Right, so in 5 years, AI governance might not just be a corporate department staffed by people. We might see the rise of AI auditors, entirely new, independent artificial intelligence systems whose sole programmed purpose is to constantly police, test, and regulate the AI systems running your business.
Wow.
The question we will have to answer then is, who governs the governor?
Oh man, that is a phenomenal question. A completely new layer of complexity as we navigate this fast-moving landscape. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, from the high stakes of unchecked historical failures through the intricacies of model cards and dashboards, all the way to mapping global regulatory crosswalks. Thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast.
It has been a great conversation.
It really has. We highly encourage you to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a deep dive into the topics shaping your industry. And please, take the time to read Felix Römer's full, comprehensive article for yourself. You can find the link to comprehensive AI governance policy for the modern workforce right down in the show notes. Until next time, keep those brakes checked and keep innovating safely.